See, he grabbed her wrist right there on the platform in front of everyone, like she was a piece of luggage someone had forgotten to claim. See, Clara Whitmore had just ended her engagement. She had just made the hardest decision of her 29 years. See, and she was walking head straight, spine stiff, carpet bag in hand toward a train that would carry her back to Iowa and away from the worst mistake she had nearly made. See, she almost made it. Then a stranger's hand closed around her wrist. See, not Silas, not the man she came to marry. See, a man she had never spoken to in her life, rough-handed, sunburned, smelling of horse and dust, turned to the small crowd gathered near the depot and said it loud enough for every soul on that platform to hear. See, she stays with me. Clara went very still, not from fear. See, not from surprise, from a particular kind of fury that only comes when someone treats your entire future like a decision they get to make for you. See, if you were standing in her shoes that morning, bag packed, ticket paid, heart bruised, but finally your own again, what would you have done? See, before we go any further, if stories like this one move you, stories about women who refuse to be owned, see, and men who had to learn the difference between love and possession, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and turn on your notifications. See, I don't want you to miss what happens next. And when you're done watching, leave a comment with the city and country where you're watching from. See, I want to see exactly how far Clara's story travels. See, now let's go back to the beginning. See, Part 1, a promise that breaks at the station. The letters had been so convincing. See, that was the part Clara kept turning over in her mind during the long train ride west, how thoroughly she had trusted words on paper. See, Silas Harrow had written beautifully, patient sentences, careful penmanship, a kind of quiet dignity in the way he described his shop and his town and his hope for a companion. See, he never used the word wife the way some men used it, like a job title for an unpaid servant. See, he said partner. He said someone to share a life with. See, she had believed him. Clara Whitmore was not a naive woman. See, she had spent 11 years running her own dressmaking operation out of a narrow shop in Davenport, Iowa, long enough to understand that most people said one thing and meant another, long enough to read a fabric's quality by touch alone. See, long enough to know that a beautiful surface often hid shoddy construction underneath. See, she was good at reading things, materials, people. See, intentions. She had misread Silas Harrow completely. See, it hadn't happened all at once. That was the cruelest part. See, the first 2 days in Red Willow had been almost pleasant. See, Silas met her at the station with a respectable distance and a stiff handshake, and she appreciated that he didn't presume familiarity just because they had an agreement on paper. See, he showed her around town, introduced her to a few neighbors. See, smiled carefully, like a man who had practiced smiling and wasn't entirely sure he'd gotten it right. See, she thought, I could work with this. Then came the third morning. See, they were sitting across from each other at the table in the small parlor connected to his shop, coffee between them. The day barely started, and Silas mentioned, in the tone of a man reviewing inventory, see, that he had already arranged to inform her clients in Iowa that her dressmaking services would no longer be available. See, Clara set down her cup. She set it down slowly, because that was how she handled things when something genuinely alarmed her. See, not rushing, not showing her hand before she understood the situation. See, you wrote to my clients, she said. Well, Silas adjusted his collar. See, you won't be needing the business anymore. You'll have more than enough to manage here. See, Silas. Her voice was even, professionally even. I have been running that operation for 11 years. See, and now you won't need to. He said it like he was doing her a favor. See, like he had lifted a burden off her shoulders without being asked. See, he even smiled, that careful, practiced smile, as though he expected gratitude. See, Clara looked at him across that table and understood something with absolute clarity, and he had not read her letters the way she had written them. See, she had told him about her work. She had described it with pride, explained what it meant to her, been explicit that she was not seeking a husband to replace her independence, but rather someone to build alongside her. See, she had been specific. Silas had read all of that and heard, "She is ready to stop." See, they talked for a long time after that. See, or rather, Clara talked, and Silas listened with increasing discomfort, and it became apparent within the first 15 minutes that this was not a misunderstanding that could be untangled with better communication. See, this was a fundamental incompatibility. Silas Harrow was a decent man. See, she believed that genuinely. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't stupid. See, but he had a picture in his mind of what marriage looked like, and in that picture, a wife's previous life was a prologue, something that preceded the real story, which was the life she built around his. See, Clara did not exist in that picture. A version of her did. See, a quieter version, a more accommodating version, a version that had traded 11 years of earned independence for a kitchen and a correct last name. See, I think, she said finally. See, very quietly. See, that we want different things. See, Silas looked at her with an expression she would remember for years afterward, not anger, not heartbreak, but something closer to bafflement. See, like she had said something in a foreign language. See, like the concept of a woman declining the life he was offering didn't fully compute. See, she did not stay for lunch. By that afternoon, she had arranged to retrieve her trunk from where it had been moved to Silas's back room, and she carried it herself, one heavy step at a time, to Martha Bellamy's boarding house 2 streets over. See, Martha, a compact woman with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, asked no questions. See, she showed Clara the room. See, named the weekly rate. See, and said only. See, breakfast is at 7. See, don't be late. Clara paid her for the first week from the envelope she kept buttoned inside her coat pocket. See, her return money. She had kept it separate from everything else, a private agreement she had made with herself before she ever boarded the train heading west. See, emergency money, walking away money, the envelope that meant she was never entirely trapped. See, she wrote to the railway office that evening and booked a return ticket for the following week. See, she folded the ticket carefully and placed it inside the same envelope. See, then she sat on the edge of the narrow boarding house bed and felt, more than thought, the weight of what had just happened. See, she had traveled hundreds of miles for a future that turned out to be someone else's idea of her future. See, she was in a town where she knew exactly one person, a widow, who had told her not to be late for breakfast. See, she was 29 years old and starting over again, in a place she had never intended to stop. See, she did not cry. She was too tired to cry, and too practical, and underneath the exhaustion too quietly, stubbornly angry to give the situation that kind of satisfaction. See, what she did instead was pull out her sewing kit, which she never packed anywhere it couldn't be reached by hand, and she began mending a small tear in her second-best blouse. See, because the blouse needed mending, because her hands knew what to do when her mind needed to be still. See, because 11 years of building something from nothing had taught her that the most useful response to a setback was almost always the same: find the next small task. See, complete it. Then find the one after that. She mended the blouse. See, she woke up for breakfast at 7. See, it was Martha who mentioned the dress shop. Not with any particular intent. Martha didn't seem to operate with particular intent in any direction, which Clara found oddly restful. See, they were the only two at the breakfast table that first morning, the other boarders apparently having left earlier, and Martha poured coffee and said, almost conversationally, "You're the dressmaker, aren't you? The one who was engaged to Silas." See, Clara looked at her. "Word travels," Martha said, without apology. "See, I was," Clara said. "I'm not anymore." Martha considered this while refilling her own cup. See, Beatrice Crowell's been short a hand for 3 weeks. See, lost her last seamstress to a marriage in Omaha. She paused. See, whether that's useful information or not depends on what you're planning to do with yourself. See, Clara thought about the return ticket folded in her coat pocket. See, she thought about Iowa. Her clients, the ones Silas had written to, the ones who now thought her shop was closing. See, even if she went back and explained the situation, there would be damage. See, confidence shaken, reputation uncertain for a season at least. See, she knew how these things worked. She had watched other women navigate them. See, it was never as simple as just coming back. She thought about the money, not the emergency envelope, but the other kind. See, the kind that had taken years to build. She thought about what it would mean to return. See, not what she would be going back to, but what she would be going back as. See, the woman whose engagement failed. The woman who went west looking for a husband and came home empty-handed. See, she could survive that. She was honest enough with herself to know she'd survived worse. See, but survival wasn't the only standard worth measuring a life by. See, where is the shop? She said. Beatrice Kroll was not warm. See, this was immediately apparent. She was a compact woman somewhere in her 50s, with the kind of posture that suggested she had decided, at some early point in her life, that slouching was a form of dishonesty. See, she looked Clara over not rudely, but with the frankness of someone who had wasted time on pleasant fictions before and didn't intend to repeat the experiment. See, you're the Harrow woman, Beatrice said. I was, Clara said. See, now I'm just the dressmaker. A pause. Something shifted in Beatrice's expression, not warmth, but a kind of recognition. See, like two people identifying themselves as members of the same small, unpleasant club. See, references, Beatrice said. Clara handed her the envelope she had carried from Iowa. See, letters from 4 clients, one from the fabric merchant she'd worked with for 8 years, one from the owner of the building where she'd kept her shop. See, she had prepared them before she left. Not because she planned to need them, but because she was the kind of person who prepared for things she hoped would never happen. See, Beatrice read each one, all the way through, without any expression on her face. See, I can offer you temporary work, she said finally. See, 2 weeks. If you're worth keeping, we'll discuss something longer. See, 2 weeks, Clara said. I'd like 3, to be fair to both of us. See, another pause. Beatrice looked at her for a long moment. See, 3 weeks, she said. Clara started the next morning. See, she had been in Red Willow for 4 days when Rhett Calder first appeared at the depot. See, she hadn't known his name then. She barely knew anything about the town, yet just the route from the boarding house to Beatrice's shop. Just Martha's breakfast hour and the particular creak of the 3rd step on the boarding house stair. See, she was still mapping the place in her mind, the way she always did when she arrived somewhere new, building a private geography of what was safe and what was uncertain. See, that morning she had gone to the railway office to confirm her return ticket. See, just to confirm it, just to make sure the booking held, that she had the departure time correct, that the seat was reserved. See, it was a practical errand, but standing in the railway office with that ticket in her hand, she had felt something unexpected, hesitation. See, not doubt, not longing, something quieter and more confusing than either a faint internal pause, like a clock skipping a beat, like the moment between one breath and the next. See, she shook it off, thanked the clerk, walked out into the morning light. See, she was halfway across the platform, bag over her arm, mind already on the morning's work at Beatrice's shop when she heard it. See, a voice, male, carrying the particular confidence of someone accustomed to being listened to in open spaces. See, not shouting, just projecting, she stays with me. See, she stopped, turned. There was a man she had never seen before. See, tall, with a rancher's build, the kind that came not from effort, but from years of physical work that didn't ask permission. See, sun-darkened skin, dark hair under the brim of a worn hat, and his hand was wrapped around her wrist. See, she had not felt him take it. She had not heard him approach. See, she had been lost in her own head, and he had just reached over and taken her arm like that was something a person could do. See, like she was a horse he was stopping from wandering off. See, several people on the platform had turned to look. See, the grip wasn't painful. That almost made it worse. See, it was casual, confident. The grip of a man who hadn't imagined, even for a second, that she might not want to be gripped. See, Clara looked down at his hand on her wrist. Then she looked up at his face. See, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't immediately classify, not aggressive, not unkind, but blazing with something urgent and unconsidered, like a man who had made a decision too fast to examine it. See, I'm sorry, she said. and her voice came out very quiet and very clear. See, something flickered across his face. He opened his mouth. See, she pulled her wrist free, not violently, not with a show. See, just a single clean motion. See, deliberate and complete. See, that communicated exactly one thing. See, you do not have permission to hold that. See, the people on the platform were still watching. See, Rhett Calder, though she still did not know. His name stood with his hand still half extended, suspended in the air where her wrist had been, looking for the first time like a man who had just heard himself from the outside. See, Clara picked up her bag. She looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. See, I don't know who you are, she said. I don't know why you said that. See, but I will tell you plainly, I am not anyone's she. See, not anymore, not ever again. Then she walked off the platform, through the morning light, in the direction of Beatrice Crowell's dress shop. See, behind her she could feel the stairs. She did not turn around. See, she walked the whole route without slowing down, and it was only when she reached the narrow back door of Beatrice's shop and put her hand on the latch that she became aware her hand was trembling. See, not from fear. She needed to be honest with herself about that. See, not from fear. From the accumulated pressure of 4 days that had each contained more than 1 day's worth of things to feel, and from the very specific fury of being treated again by a second man, see, before she'd even had time to recover from the first, as though her direction of travel was something someone else got to decide. See, she breathed. She pushed open the door. She sat down at the work table, and she picked up the fabric and the needle that needed threading, and she made herself thread it with steady hands, one eye of the needle at a time. See, she was still in Red Willow. She had not left. Her ticket was in her pocket. See, she had 6 days. And as she began the first careful stitches of the morning, she was not thinking about Iowa or Silas or the man on the platform with his hand in the air. See, she was thinking with a clarity that surprised her about something Martha Bellamy had said over coffee that morning. See, an offhand thing. A throwaway line that had apparently lodged itself somewhere behind her sternum and refused to let go. See, funny thing about this town, Martha had said, refilling the cups without being asked. See, women come through here all the time, on their way somewhere else. See, some of them figure out that somewhere else was here the whole time. See, most of them don't. It's hard to see a place clearly when you're already facing the door. See, Clara's needle moved through the fabric. In, through. See, out pull, she thought, I have been facing the door since I arrived. See, she did not know yet what that thought would cost her. See, she did not know yet what it might be worth. The needle slipped. See, it wasn't dramatic, just a small, sharp prick to the pad of her left index finger, the kind that happened when a person's hands were doing one thing while their mind was doing another entirely. See, Clara pulled her finger back, pressed it against her thumb, and waited for the sting to pass. See, a small bead of red appeared at the tip. She blotted it carefully on the inside hem of the fabric where it wouldn't show, then sat still for a moment, looking at her own hands like they belonged to someone she was just getting acquainted with. See, 3 days had passed since the platform. She had not seen the man again. See, had not asked anyone his name, had in fact made a private rule against asking, because asking would mean she was thinking about it. And she was absolutely not still thinking about the look on his face when she pulled her wrist free. See, that particular expression. The way the confidence had drained out of it all at once, replaced by something she hadn't expected and couldn't quite name. See, not embarrassment exactly. Something more uncomfortable than embarrassment. See, something that looked almost like recognition. She threaded a new length of thread and went back to work. See, Beatrice's shop occupied the ground floor of a narrow building on Red Willow's main commercial street. See, and in 3 days Clara had learned its rhythms, the way she learned any new workspace by paying attention to what it needed instead of what she expected. See, the morning light came through the east window and was good for detailed work. See, by afternoon it had shifted and you needed the lamp. See, the cutting table wobbled on its left rear leg, and you had to account for that, or your measurements came out wrong. See, Beatrice kept her best fabrics in the back cabinet with the stuck drawer, And if you pulled it too fast, the whole thing shook and unsettled the spools on top. See, Clara had fixed the drawer on her second morning, without being asked, using a small piece of wax she kept in her kit for exactly that kind of problem. See, Beatrice had looked at the drawer, then at Clara, then gone back to what she was doing without a word. See, but she had given Clara the key to the good fabric cabinet by the end of the day. See, that was how trust worked with a woman like Beatrice Crowell. See, not warmth, not declarations, just incrementally expanded access to the things that mattered. See, Clara understood it perfectly, because she operated the same way herself, and recognizing the pattern in someone else was its own kind of relief. See, what she was less prepared for was the town. Red Willow was not what she had imagined when she read Silas's letters. See, she had pictured something rawer, more provisional a place that felt like it was still deciding whether to exist. See, instead it had the particular texture of a community that had already survived several things and was quietly proud of it. See, the buildings were real buildings, not false fronts. See, the people nodded to each other on the street with the familiarity of neighbors who had borrowed each other's tools and sat with each other through illnesses and forgiven each other for things nobody mentioned anymore. See, there was a library, small but real, a school with 2 rooms. See, a doctor who had been there long enough that children he had delivered were now bringing him their own sick children. See, it was, Clara found herself thinking, an actual place. See, she wasn't sure when she had stopped assuming it wouldn't be. See, what she was sure of was that it didn't change anything. See, her ticket was still in her pocket. 5 days. She would work out the rest of her temporary arrangement with Beatrice, finish the projects she'd started, leave the workroom in better order than she'd found it, and go. See, that was the plan. She had a plan. She was a woman who made plans and followed them, and she was not, she told herself again, firmly thinking about any of this in any other way. See, the bell above the shop door rang. Clara did not look up from her work. See, it was Beatrice's shop. Beatrice handled the front. See, Clara heard footsteps on the wood floor, heard the low murmur of a customer's voice, heard Beatrice's clipped professional response. See, then a different set of footsteps, heavier, the particular weight of someone who spent most of their time outdoors. See, Mrs. Crowell, a man's voice, careful, like he was measuring what came out. See, I'm looking for the woman who's working here, the dressmaker from Iowa. See, Clara's needle stopped. She's occupied, Beatrice said, in a tone that could have stopped a freight train. See, I know. I won't take long. A pause. I just need a minute. See, another pause. Longer. Clara could feel Beatrice deciding something. See, 2 minutes, Beatrice said. Then I need my workroom back. See, the footsteps came through the curtain. Clara did not put down her work. See, she finished the stitch she was on, set the needle, and then looked up, because her mother had raised her to look at things directly, even when she'd rather not. See, he was the same man. Of course he was. Taller than she remembered. Or maybe the platform had shrunk him somehow outdoors, always did that, made people harder to scale. See, he had taken off his hat when he came inside, which she noted without giving it any particular weight. See, his face was weathered in the way of men who worked outside their whole lives. Not old, but well-used, like good leather. See, he was holding the hat in both hands and turning the brim in a slow rotation that looked involuntary, like something his hands did when the rest of him didn't know what to do. See, he looked at the fabric she was working on, then at her hands. See, then finally at her face like he'd been working up to it. See, I came to apologize, he said. Clara looked at him steadily. See, all right, he seemed to have expected something more than that, because he stopped turning the hat and a line appeared between his brows. See, I wanted to explain. You don't need to explain, Clara said. See, an apology doesn't require a reason attached to it. See, either you're sorry or you're not. He absorbed that. See, I'm sorry, he said. Plain. No decorating it. What's your name, she said. See, Rhett Calder. Mr. Calder. She picked up her needle again. See, I accept your apology. You can go. He didn't go. See, she waited 3 seconds, then looked up again. Was there something else? See, The hat rotation had resumed. I was wondering. He stopped. See, started again. I know you're leaving. I heard, and I know I don't have any standing to ask you anything, given how we met. See, but I was wondering if you might sometime, before you go. See, walk with me. Clara looked at him, not because she was considering it. See, she was not considering it. She was looking at him the way she looked at a fabric when she was trying to understand its actual composition versus what it was being sold as. See, no, she said. He nodded once. All right. He turned the hat over in his hands one more time, like he was checking he'd gotten everything out of it. See, thank you for hearing me out. He put the hat back on his head and walked back through the curtain. See, the bell above the door rang. Clara sat with her needle unmoving in her hand and listened to the silence he left behind. See, then she heard Beatrice's footsteps approaching the curtain, and she went back to her stitching before the older woman appeared in the doorway. See, Beatrice looked at the curtain, then at Clara, then at the work on the table. See, Rhett Calder, she said in the tone of a woman filing information. See, apparently, Clara said. Beatrice made a sound that wasn't quite a word, and went back to the front of the shop. See, she told Martha that evening, because Martha was the kind of person who already knew and would hear a more distorted version from someone else if Clara didn't offer the straightforward one first. See, Martha listened over supper, a practical meal, some kind of braised meat and potatoes, nothing fancy without interrupting. See, he grabbed your wrist on the platform, she said when Clara finished. See, he did. And then he came and apologized. He did. See, Martha chewed thoughtfully. What did he say when he did it? See, on the platform, that I was staying with him. Martha set down her fork. See, Rhett Calder said that. Is that surprising? Martha picked her fork back up. See, it's surprising, he apologized. She paused. Not that he did it in the first place. See, he's not a bad man, but he is hasty. Always has been. See, acts on what he feels before he thinks about whether feeling it gives him the right to act. See, Clara considered this. That describes a lot of men. See, it does, Martha agreed. The difference with Rhett is he usually figures out afterwards that he was wrong. See, most men never get that far. She shrugged. Whether that makes him better or just more self-aware about his bad habits, I couldn't say. See, Clara didn't respond. She ate her supper and thought about the hat rotating in his hands. See, the particular quality of stillness in his face when she said no, and he said all right and meant it. See, she still wasn't thinking about it. See, her ticket was for a Tuesday. See, on Thursday 5 days before she was due to leave, she was carrying a wrapped parcel of finished work to a customer on the far end of Main Street when she saw Rhett Calder coming out of the hardware store on the opposite side. See, he saw her at the same moment. There was a half second where they both had the option of pretending they hadn't, and Clara was fully prepared to take that option. See, he crossed the street. She kept walking. He fell into step beside her, not close, leaving the kind of distance between them that communicated a specific intention toward respect. See, I'm not bothering you, he said. I just happen to be going this direction. See, the livery stable is that direction, Clara said. See, I know because I've walked this route 4 times this week. See, well, a pause. I need something from near the livery stable. See, do you? Possibly. Despite herself, the corner of her mouth moved. See, barely. Less than half an inch. She clamped it back down before it could become anything. See, they walked in silence for a few steps. I heard you're working for Beatrice Crowell, he said. See, for 3 weeks, yes. Then I'm leaving. Right. He walked another few steps. See, how's she treating you? Clara glanced at him sideways. See, why? Beatrice is she's fair, but she can be hard to work for. See, I know some people who've tried. She's exacting, Clara said. See, I don't have a problem with exacting. I'm exacting myself. See, he nodded. I figured you probably were. She stopped walking. See, he stopped too, a step ahead of her and turned, mister. See, Calder. She said, what do you actually want? He looked at her for a moment. See, the kind of look that takes stock of itself while it's happening, like he was watching himself from a small distance and making adjustments. See, I want to know you better, he said. That's the honest answer. See, I know I don't have any right to, and I know you said no, and I'm not here to ask again. See, I wanted to be honest about it, since I've been pretty bad at that so far. See, Clara studied him. You said 3 sentences and they were all true. See, that's better than most conversations I've had since I got here. See, something in his face changed, not a smile exactly, more like the structural support under a smile, the thing that would make it possible if he let it. See, I don't know your name, he said. I mean, I know it. See, everyone in town knows it, but you haven't told me yourself. See, a pause. Clara Whitmore, she said. Clara, he said it like he was making sure he had it right. See, Miss Whitmore, I'll leave you to your delivery. He turned and walked back the way they'd come. See, Clara stood for a moment on the boardwalk with the parcel in her hands, watching him go, and felt against every practical inclination she possessed the small, inconvenient pull of curiosity. See, she delivered the parcel. She walked back to the shop. See, she picked up her needle. She thought 4 days. See, she asked Martha that night, casually, over the ditch washing, which they both did without discussion because Martha's last boarder had apparently never offered and Clara had been raised differently. See, Rhett Calder, she said. What does he do exactly? See, Martha handed her a wet plate without looking at her. See, ranch hand. Works out at the Alderman Spread, 12 miles east. See, has been since he was 19 or so. One of the better ones. Alderman doesn't keep bad workers. He's too practical for that. See, does he have family here? Parents are gone. Has a younger brother in Colorado he sees maybe once a year. Martha paused. See, why? Just orienting myself, Clara said, understanding the town. See, Martha handed her another plate. The M contained volumes that Martha declined to elaborate on, and Clara did not ask her to. See, the apology she had not expected. See, the walking away when she said no that she had expected even less. See, the thing about men who grabbed your wrist and said she stays with me was that they generally did not then retreat cleanly and without argument. See, they explained themselves. They justified. They decided that their intent made the action acceptable, and they argued the case at length until either you agreed or you found a way to remove yourself from the argument. See, Clara had navigated that particular landscape more than once, and she had developed efficient techniques for it. See, none of those techniques had been needed, and that was what she kept returning to in the spare minutes between tasks, in the quiet just before sleep. See, not the man himself, not his face or his voice or the hat turning in his hands, but the specific fact of his retreat. See, the absence of argument, the all right that had no conditions attached to it. See, on Friday she looked up from her work and said to Beatrice, without preamble, "Is Rhett Calder a reliable person?" See, Beatrice did not look up from her own work. Depends on what you're asking him to be reliable about. See, in general. Beatrice was quiet for a moment. He does what he says he'll do. See, doesn't lie, as far as I've seen. Acts before he thinks, but he thinks afterward, which is more than I can say for most. A pause. See, he's not a man who's finished becoming who he's going to be. See, whether that's a recommendation or a warning, I suppose depends on the day. See, Clara nodded slowly. Is there a reason you're asking? Beatrice said, in the tone of a woman who already knows the reason. See, just orienting myself, Clara said. Beatrice made exactly the same sound Martha had made. See, on Saturday, Clara changed her ticket. See, not canceled. She told herself that clearly. Not canceled. See, changed. She told the clerk at the railway office that she needed to push the departure back work obligations, she said, which was partly true. See, she was in the middle of a project at Beatrice's shop that she didn't want to leave unfinished. See, another week would let her complete it properly and leave without any loose ends. See, the clerk adjusted the booking without comment. Clara walked out into the street with the new ticket in her pocket. See, and she stood in the morning light outside the railway office and breathed the dry prairie air and felt the exact shape of what she had just done and chose not to examine it too closely. See, she walked to the shop. She did not see Rhett that day. See, she did not see him on Sunday either, which was a day off, which she spent at the boarding house reading one of Martha's books and listening to the wind against the window and not thinking about anything in particular. See, on Monday morning, when she arrived at Beatrice's shop, there was something on the work table. See, not flowers, not a note, a small piece of good quality dark blue wool, just a square of it, about a foot across, clearly cut from a larger bolt with a small paper tucked under the corner that said only, see, I thought this might be the right color for the Nebraska sky in October. See, it isn't. I'm not sure what color that is. There was no signature. See, there didn't need to be. Clara stood over the wool for a full minute. See, then she picked it up and felt the weight of it between her fingers. It was good quality, well chosen, the kind that would wear for years, and she folded it carefully and put it in her kit. See, she thought, that is either very stupid or very perceptive. See, she could not decide which. By the end of the day, she had decided it was both, which somehow made it worse. See, he found a reason to be walking down her route on Tuesday. See, on Wednesday, she was the one who crossed the street, and she told herself it was because the other side had less mud from the overnight rain, which was true, though it was not the entire truth. See, by Thursday they were walking the same direction without either of them inventing a reason for it, and she was answering his questions about Iowa, about her shop there, about how she had started. See, who had taught her, and he was listening in the way that good listeners listened, not waiting for his turn to talk, but actually taking in what she said and turning it over like something with weight and value. See, you built all of it yourself, he said. It wasn't a question. See, I had help in the beginning. A woman I worked for let me use her shop on Sundays when she was closed. See, for 2 years I paid her not a small percentage of whatever I earned in her space. See, what happened to her? She retired, sold the shop to someone who didn't want to rent on Sundays. Clara glanced at him. See, so I rented my own space. How old were you? 22. See, he was quiet for a moment. That's something. See, it wasn't dramatic, she said. It was just the next step. See, you do the next step until there are no more steps that someone else has to do for you. See, he turned that over. I never thought about it like that. See, how do you think about it? Mostly I just do things, he said. See, I see something that needs doing and I do it. I don't plan much, a pause. See, that's gotten me into trouble. I know, she said. See, he looked at her sideways. You mean the platform? See, among other things, I'd imagine. He exhaled not quite a laugh, but the cousin of one. See, yeah, among other things. He looked out ahead of them, and his jaw shifted in a way that suggested he was making a decision about whether to keep talking. See, I saw you on the platform, and I heard you were leaving, and I panicked. See, I didn't think reached. You panicked, Clara repeated. See, I know how that sounds. It sounds like you decided your panic was my problem. See, he flinched. It was small, but real. Yeah, that's what it was. He said it without softening it or following it with anything else, and she found that she respected that more than she would have liked to. See, they had reached the point in the street where their routes separated. See, Clara stopped. Mr. Calder, I'm still leaving, she said. See, I want to be clear about that. He nodded. I know. See, I'm not saying that to be unkind. I know, he said again. See, I'm not asking you to stay. She looked at him. Then what are you asking? See, he thought about it for a moment, genuinely thought, which she could tell because the thinking was visible on his face, in a way he clearly wasn't managing. See, I'm asking if we can just keep walking, he said. See, when we're going the same direction, no expectations attached. See, Clara stood on the edge of the boardwalk in the afternoon light with the revised train ticket in her coat pocket and looked at a man who had grabbed her wrist and then retreated cleanly and left her wool on a work table and said, I know. See, without argument when she told him she was leaving. See, all right, she said. She turned and walked toward the boarding house. See, he stood where he was, and she was halfway down the block when she realized she was holding her breath, and she let it go and thought, this is not a plan. See, this is the opposite of a plan. I do not do the opposite of a plan. See, but she was still there. Her ticket was pushed back another week. See, and the wool in her kit was the exact blue-gray of the Nebraska sky, just before the light went out of it for the day, which was not what he had said, but was what he had, apparently, been trying to say. See, the town noticed. This was in retrospect inevitable. See, Red Willow was not a large place, and it had the social dynamics of all small places intricate, long-memoried, and largely conducted through implication rather than statement. See, people did not say things directly. They said things adjacent to other things and waited to see how you responded. See, 2 women in the dry goods store mentioned Rhett Calder while Clara was there, specifically loudly enough to be overheard. See, one of them, a woman in her 40s, with the particular expression of someone who considers themselves a civic institution, looked at Clara with a bright and not entirely friendly smile. See, "You know Rhett's quite taken with you," she said. See, everyone can see it. Clara kept her eyes on the bolts of thread she was examining. See, "I'm sure I don't know anything about that. He's a good man," the woman continued, with the energy of someone delivering a verdict. See, "A little wild, but good men usually are, don't you find? And it would do him good to settle down with the right." See, "I'm not the right anything," Clara said pleasantly. See, "I'm a dressmaker passing through on my way back to Iowa." She chose a spool of thread, turned to the counter, and did not give the woman another opening. See, she was still there. That was the part that caught on something raw when she thought about it later, walking back to Beatrice's shop with her thread and her jaw set. See, she kept telling people she was leaving, and she kept not leaving, and at some point those 2 things would have to resolve into something true. See, she had changed her ticket twice. She had not told Rhett. See, she wasn't sure what it would mean if she did. See, he was there that evening, on the bench outside the boarding house, which he had not done before, and which communicated something, though she wasn't sure what. See, he stood when he saw her. "I heard what happened in the dry goods store," he said. See, Clara stopped at the bottom of the boarding house steps. See, word travels fast. It's a small town. He looked not quite embarrassed, but like a man who was considering it. See, Ida Marsh means well. She doesn't know where to stop. See, "She called me the right woman to settle you down," Clara said. See, "That is not a position I have applied for." "I know." He rubbed the back of his neck. See, "I didn't put that in anyone's head. I want you to know that. See, I haven't told anybody anything about any of this." See, "Any of what?" she said. He looked at her. The evening light was coming sideways and doing something complicated with his face. See, "The walking," he said. "The conversations. I haven't told anyone. See, people see things. Yeah, a beat. I'm sorry if it's caused you trouble." See, Clara stood at the bottom of the steps for a moment. See, then she said, "It hasn't. I just don't like being someone's convenient narrative." She paused. See, "The town wants a story about the woman who came to get married and got swept up by someone else instead." See, "I'm not that story." "What story are you?" She looked at him. See, it was a more honest question than she'd expected, delivered without pretense, and it deserved something better than deflection. See, "I don't know yet," she said. "That's the whole point of being here." See, he was quiet. The bench was to his left, and he looked at it for a second, like he was considering sitting back down, then didn't. See, "I corrected Ida's husband this afternoon," he said. See, he was telling someone in the barber shop that you were basically Rhett Calder's woman at this point. See, Clara went very still, and I told him that was wrong. See, that you'd promised me nothing, that you were your own business, and if he had thoughts about you, they should start from that. See, she studied his face in the evening light. "How did he take that?" See, poorly, Rhett said. "He thinks I've gone soft." A pause. See, "Maybe I have. I don't know." It seemed like the right thing to say. See, Clara stood there for another moment. Then she did something she had not planned and could not entirely account for. She sat down on the bottom step of the boarding house. See, not inviting him to join her, just sitting, being there in the evening in this specific place, without the forward momentum of going somewhere else. See, after a moment, Rhett sat back down on the bench. They sat in the approximate silence of the early evening, in a small town distant sounds, a dog somewhere, the particular quality of light just before it gave out entirely. See, "I pushed my ticket back," Clara said, not looking at him. See, Looking at the street, he was very still beside her. See, I'm not telling you that because it means anything about you, she said. See, I'm telling you because I've been telling you I'm leaving, and that's been technically true, but not the whole picture. See, and I told you I had a problem with men who weren't honest. See, a pause. When are you leaving? His voice was even. See, she couldn't hear what it was costing him to make it even. See, I don't know, she said. That's the honest answer. See, another pause. Okay, he said. Not why, not does that mean? Not I'm glad. See, just okay, plain and still, like a man holding a door open and making absolutely sure he was not pushing anyone through it. See, Clara sat on the step with the cool evening air around her and the street quiet and the ticket in her pocket with no date on it that felt certain anymore. See, and she did not know what she was building toward or what she was walking away from, or whether those two things were, at some point she couldn't yet see, going to turn out to be the same. See, she knew this. She had come to Red Willow expecting someone else to give her a future. See, she was still here. The future was still undecided. See, and for the first time in her life, that did not feel entirely like a disaster. See, the letter from Iowa arrived on a Wednesday. Clara almost didn't open it right away. See, she had developed a habit over the past weeks of saving correspondence for the evening when the shop was closed, when the light had gone soft and Martha's boarding house had its particular end-of-day quiet. See, when she could read without the interruption of whatever task was waiting. See, so she tucked the envelope into her coat pocket alongside the train ticket that still had no firm date attached to it, and she went back to the piece she was finishing for a rancher's wife who needed it by Friday. See, she sewed for 2 more hours. She did not think about the letter. See, or rather, she thought about it the way you think about a sound you heard in another room aware of it, without turning toward it, tracking it from the corner of your attention while the rest of you pretended to be busy with something else. See, it was from Margaret Ellison. See, Clara knew that from the handwriting before she'd even fully registered the Iowa postmark, Margaret had the particular script of a woman who'd been taught penmanship by someone strict and had spent 30 years slowly dismantling the discipline of. See, it so that now each letter was a negotiation between what it was supposed to look like and what it wanted to be. See, Clara had known Margaret for 6 years. She was one of Clara's best clients, but more than that, she was the wife of Thomas Ellison, who owned the fabric import business on the east side of Davenport, and who had on 2 separate occasions, mentioned that he could use someone with Clara's eye for quality and her organizational precision in a supervisory role. See, she had always declined politely. She hadn't been ready those 2 times. See, the shop had needed her full attention, and she had been suspicious of arrangements that moved her out of her own space and into someone else's structure, where her continuity depended on someone else's goodwill. See, but that had been before Silas wrote to her clients. See, before the trip west. See, before the engagement that dissolved before it fully formed, and the return ticket she'd changed 3 times now, and the strange suspended state of being a woman with no clear next step who kept finding reasons to stay in the same place. See, she waited until after supper to open it. Martha had gone to her room. See, the house was quiet. See, Clara sat at the small desk in her room, with the lamp turned up, and opened the envelope with the same patience she used to open a seam. She wasn't sure about carefully, so she could see what was underneath without tearing anything she might need. See, Margaret wrote the way she talked, warm and direct and slightly breathless, like she was always just a little ahead of herself. See, the first paragraph was catching up her children, her sister's new house, the weather, a recipe she'd tried that Clara would have hated, because Clara had no patience for recipes that required excessive standing. See, Clara read it quickly, looking for the thing that had prompted Margaret to write all the way to Nebraska. See, it was in the 3rd paragraph. Thomas had finally done it. See, he was opening a second location on the north side of the city, larger than the first, and he needed someone to run the new showroom to manage the inventory selection, to train the staff, to build the client relationships from the ground floor. See, he had asked, through Margaret, whether Clara Whitmore might possibly be available and interested. See, Clara read the paragraph twice. Then she set the letter down on the desk and looked at the far wall for a long moment. See, it was a good offer. She understood that immediately, with the same instinct that told her when a fabric was worth its price. See, not just good, it was the kind of offer that addressed, specifically, the things that had been most damaged by the Silas situation. See, the client Silas had written to, the professional uncertainty of returning to Davenport as the woman whose engagement failed Thomas Ellison's offer, leapfrogged all of that. See, she would arrive not as someone explaining a setback, but as someone who had been specifically sought for a significant position. See, the narrative of her return would be entirely different. See, it solved the Iowa problem. It also, in a way she did not immediately want to examine, made every remaining reason to stay in Red Willow much more legible. See, if she was weighing options, she now had two real options, not one option and one absence of option. See, and weighing two real options required being honest about what each one actually contained. See, she picked up the letter again. Margaret, at the end, had written, "Thomas says to tell you there's no urgency, but between us, Clara, there is a little urgency. See, he's talking to two other women, and you know how he is once he decides something." See, Clara folded the letter. She put it back in the envelope. See, she sat for a while longer, and outside the window the Nebraska night was wide and dark and full of nothing in particular, and inside her chest was the particular sensation of a decision beginning to form not yet visible. See, the way a shape isn't visible through heavy fog but present. See, exerting pressure, she did not sleep well. See, she told Beatrice first. Not because Beatrice had a right to know before anyone else, but because the shop was where Clara spent most of her time. See, and Beatrice was the kind of person who noticed when something had changed in a person's attention and said so plainly rather than working around it. See, Clara had learned to respect that. See, she had also learned, in the past weeks, that Beatrice Crowell was a more complicated person than she'd first appeared exacting. Yes, and not warm in the conventional sense, but fair in a way that was rarer and more valuable than warmth. See, and possessed of a particular direct honesty that Clara found unexpectedly restful. See, she told her about the letter during the mid-morning lull, when they were both at their respective tables and the shop was empty of customers. See, she gave the facts without commentary, who the offer was from, what it involved, the general shape of what it would mean professionally. See, Beatrice listened without interrupting. "When do they need an answer?" she said when Clara finished. See, Margaret didn't give an exact date. Within the month, I'd assume. See, Beatrice looked at the fabric she was working with a piece of gray wool she'd been re-examining for the past 10 minutes without cutting into it. See, "I was planning to talk to you this week," she said. See, "about the position here." Clara looked at her. "Permanently," Beatrice said. See, "I've been thinking about it since your second week." See, "I didn't want to say anything while you were still making decisions about other things, because I didn't want it to feel like pressure." She set the fabric down. See, "I'm saying it now because you should have the complete picture before you make any decision." See, Clara was quiet for a moment. "You're offering me the position." See, "I'm offering you the position," Beatrice confirmed. See, "Same hours. A fair wage. I'll give you a number this afternoon, if you want one in a year or two, depending on how things go. There's a conversation to be had about partnership. See, I won't put more weight on that than it should carry right now. See, but I'm not pretending it's not a possibility." Clara looked at her own hands on the table. See, the needle, the fabric, the work that had been hers for 3 weeks now, as familiar as anything she'd built in Iowa, in less time than she would have thought possible. See, "Why?" she said. Beatrice picked up the wool again. See, "Because you're the best seamstress I've had in this shop in 15 years, and I'm 61 years old, and I'm not going to find another one who fixed my stuck drawer on the second morning without being asked." She paused. See, "Also, I like the way you handle difficult customers. See, you're polite and completely immovable at the same time. See, that's a skill I haven't been able to teach anyone. See, Clara looked away because something was moving in her chest that she didn't want visible on her face yet. See, not sentiment, or not only that, but the particular, almost painful feeling of being accurately seen. See, of having someone identify what you were actually worth rather than what you were worth in relation to someone else. See, I need some time, she said. Take it, Beatrice said. See, but not too much. The gray wool won't wait forever either. See, she did not tell Rhett that day, or the next. See, on the third day after the letter arrived, they were walking the late afternoon route that had become, without either of them formally agreeing to it, a kind of regular thing, not every day, but most days. See, on the stretch between Beatrice's shop and the point where their directions genuinely separated. See, they talked about ordinary things. His work at the Alderman Ranch, the specific, physical, unromantic work of it. See, the fence repairs, and the stock management, and the hierarchy among the ranch hands, and the particular personality of a horse named Governor, who Rhett seemed to regard with something between respect and personal grievance. See, her work at the shop, the difficult customers, the interesting ones, the strange requests. A woman last week who had wanted an evening gown made from fabric that was genuinely not suited for evening gowns and had required careful management. See, he listened. He laughed sometimes, and his laugh was not polished. It was a little rough, a little surprised, like something that got out before he decided to let it. See, she found she liked that about it. She was also increasingly aware of what she liked about him, and increasingly suspicious of herself for noticing. See, it was Martha who said it first, which Clara should have anticipated. See, Martha had a gift for waiting until something had been true for a while and then naming it in a tone that suggested she'd been patiently waiting for you to catch up. See, you're staying, Martha said. Not a question. Over breakfast, without preamble, 2 weeks after the letter arrived. See, Clara poured her coffee. I haven't decided. You've changed your ticket 3 times. Martha spread butter on her bread with unhurried strokes. See, you took a permanent position with Beatrice. Don't look at me like that, she told me. See, we've known each other 20 years. A pause. And you've been walking with Rhett Calder most afternoons for a month. See, the walks don't mean anything conclusive. No, Martha agreed. See, they don't mean he means anything conclusive. They mean you're not done with this place. See, that's not about him, that's about you. She took a bite of bread, chewed, considered. See, which is probably the point. Clara looked at her coffee. See, I have a job offer in Iowa. I know, Margaret Ellison's husband. See, Clara looked up. Martha shrugged. Small town. Also, Margaret wrote to me years ago when I still had family in Davenport. See, we exchange letters occasionally. She said this without apology. See, it's a good offer. Yes, so is Beatrice's. Yes. See, different kinds of good, Martha said. Yes. Martha put down her bread and looked at Clara with the directness of someone who had decided that the time for indirect approaches had passed. See, what does Red Willow have that Iowa doesn't? Set aside Rhett Calder entirely. See, pretend he doesn't exist. What does this place have that Iowa doesn't? See, Clara was quiet for a moment. Something I built myself, she said. See, without anyone knowing who I was or what I'd done before. See, without anyone's prior impression of me. Beatrice hired me because I threaded a needle well and fixed her drawer. See, not because I'd been around for years and built a reputation. See, not because people knew me. She paused. I've been Clara Whitmore in Iowa my whole life. See, people there know how to think about me. They have a version of me they've already assembled. She looked out the window at the street. See, here no one had a version of me yet. I got to be a version I made. See, Martha was quiet for a long moment. That, she said finally, is the most honest thing I've heard anyone say at this table in a long time. See, she told Rhett about the Iowa offer that afternoon. See, she had decided she would tell him because not telling him had started to feel like a form of dishonesty, which was something she had told him she had a problem with in other people and was therefore obligated to hold herself to as well. See, he deserved to know. Not because it was his business it wasn't. Not exactly, but because they had been talking most afternoons for a month. and the conversations had become real in the way that only certain conversations do. See, the kind where you say things you didn't know you were going to say until you heard yourself saying them. See, she told him plainly. The offer. What it involved. See, the professional advantage it represented given everything that had happened with Silas. See, he walked beside her and listened and did not interrupt. See, when she finished, he was quiet for a few steps. When do you have to decide? He said. See, within the month. He nodded. He looked straight ahead at the street. See, his jaw was doing the thing it did when he was working something out and trying not to let it show, except that it always showed, because he was not a man who had mastered concealment. See, that's a good offer, he said. I know. Better than staying in a place you weren't planning to stay, working for someone you didn't plan to work for. He said it evenly. See, like he was reading the situation out loud to himself, taking stock of it. See, Beatrice has offered me the permanent position too, Clara said. See, he stopped walking. She stopped too and looked at him. See, his expression went through several things in rapid succession, none of them fully landing before the next one arrived surprise. Something that might have been hope, see, and then very deliberate control coming down over both of them like a window being shut. See, 2 real options, he said. 2 real options, she confirmed. See, he started walking again. She matched his pace. I'm not going to tell you what to choose, he said. See, I want to make sure you know that. I do know that. See, and I'm not going to. He stopped. Tried again. I don't want you to factor me in. See, to whatever you decide. I shouldn't be a factor. See, Clara looked at him sideways. You're not a factor, she said. See, or you're a smaller factor than you might think, and I mean that as a compliment. See, what I'm actually deciding is whether I want the life this town offers or the life Iowa offers. See, those are both real, independent of you. He absorbed this. See, she could almost see him absorbing it, taking it in, sitting with it, resisting the impulse to reach for it or argue with it. See, okay, he said. His voice was a little rough. Not broken, she wouldn't say broken, but rough, the way a road got rough in certain weather. See, okay. They walked the rest of the block in silence. See, at the point where their routes separated, he stopped. See, turned. Whatever you choose, he said. I want it to be yours. See, not partly yours with something of mine mixed into it that you can't account for later. See, completely yours. She looked at him for a long moment. See, the afternoon light was doing the complicated thing with his face again, and she was tired of pretending not to notice that he had a face worth looking at for a long moment. See, I know, she said. She turned and walked toward the boarding house. See, she did not look back, but she heard him, just before she was out of earshot, not calling after her, just something low, almost private, like a thought that had gotten out. Damn. See, she kept walking. The word followed her the whole rest of the way home and lodged somewhere it took several days to dislodge. See, there was a woman named Ruby Holt. See, Clara met her in Beatrice's shop on a Tuesday afternoon, 3.5 weeks after the Iowa letter arrived, and 2 days before Clara's unofficial mental deadline for making a decision. See, Ruby Holt was 24, recently widowed. See, with 2 children under the age of 6, and a calloused look around her eyes that came not from bitterness, but from the specific exhaustion of someone who had been holding things together alone for longer than they'd expected to. See, she came in looking for alterations on a dress she could wear to seek domestic work in better households, something presentable, she said, not fancy, just presentable. See, because the dress she had wasn't, and she knew what a wrong first impression cost you. See, Clara was at the front counter because Beatrice was in the back with a fitting. See, she looked at Ruby Holt's dress. It was salvageable, more than salvageable, a decent cut that had been maintained imperfectly, and she looked at Ruby Holt, see, who was looking back with the particular expression of someone who has gotten very good at not asking for things they're not sure they'll be given. See, take it off, Clara said. I'll look at the seams. See, Ruby blinked. I haven't said what I can pay yet. See, I know. Take it off. There's a screen in the back. See, she had it done in 40 minutes, the side seams let out where they needed to be, the hem properly leveled, A tear in the left sleeve she hadn't been able to see from the outside mended from the inside. See, she showed Ruby how the work had been done, specifically and practically, because she had learned from women who explained things, and she believed in continuing the line. See, "What do I owe you?" Ruby said, her voice doing a small, careful thing. See, Clara named a price that was honest and not punishing. See, Ruby Holt paid it without the expression people sometimes had when charity was being offered at a low price, that particular mixture of gratitude and humiliation that came with knowing you were being. See, treated gently because your circumstances required it. See, she paid it like she was paying a fair price, because she was. See, after she left, Beatrice came out from the back. "What did you charge her?" she said. See, Clara told her. Beatrice was quiet for a moment. "That's about half what the work cost us in time." See, "Yes." "Why?" Clara thought about it, because she needed the dress and she knew exactly what it was for, and she didn't perform helplessness to earn a discount. She paused. See, and because this town has more women who need wages than it has places that will help them get positioned to earn them. See, Beatrice looked at her for a long moment. The particular look she used when she was filing something away under a different category than where she'd originally put it. See, "Sit down for a moment," Beatrice said. Clara sat. See, Beatrice sat across from her, not at the work table, but at the small table near the window where they occasionally had tea, which had its own significance in the geography of the shop. See, "I want to tell you something," Beatrice said, "not as an argument for you to stay. See, just as information. All right, I started this shop 32 years ago with $4, a borrowed machine, and a very clearly communicated opinion from everyone around me that it would fail within a year." She folded her hands on the table. See, "It did not fail. It has not failed. I have outlasted 2 recessions, a drought, 4 competitors, and more than I'll tell you about in one conversation." A pause. See, "What I have not been able to do is keep good people. See, not because I don't pay fairly, but because good women in this town have been moving through it their whole lives, on the way to a husband, on the way to another town. See, on the way to something that always seems to be just ahead of wherever they currently are." See, Clara was quiet. "What you said to Ruby Holt about showing her the work about the seams," Beatrice said. See, "That's what this shop could be if the right person helped shape it. See, not just a place to buy dresses, a place where women learn what work is worth and learn how to do it." She paused. See, that is not a small thing, in a town like this, in a time like this. See, Clara looked at the table, the grain of the wood, the wear at the edge from years of things being set there. See, she thought about Davenport, about the North Side showroom. See, about Thomas Ellison, who was a fair man and a good businessman, and who would give her a clear structure and competitive wages and a role she could do very well, and from which she would probably eventually want something different. See, the way she always eventually wanted something different. See, she thought about this room, this table, the stuck drawer she'd fixed on the second morning. See, "I need 2 more days," she said. "You have them," Beatrice said. See, the decision came to her not as a revelation, but as a recognition, which was different. See, revelations announced themselves. Recognitions were quieter. They arrived like something that had been there for a while, and you were only now turning around to look at. See, it came on a Thursday evening when she was walking back from the shop alone. Rhett was out at the ranch, a longer shift that kept him through Friday. See, and she had noticed the absence of those walks, with a specificity she didn't bother to deny anymore. See, she was walking alone, and she passed the railway office. See, she slowed. She looked at the door. She thought about Iowa with the same honesty she always tried to apply to important things, not what Iowa represented, not the safety and familiarity of it, but Iowa itself. See, specifically, what her actual daily life would look like. See, the showroom, the clients, the distance between one day and the next. See, then she thought about Red Willow, the shop, Ruby Holt's face when Clara showed her the seam work. See, Beatrice across the table saying not just a place to buy dresses. See, Martha saying, "You're the most honest person at this table." See, the wool in her kit, blue-gray as the sky going dark. See, She walked past the railway office. She kept walking. See, she did not go in. That night she wrote 2 letters. See, one to Margaret Ellison, thanking her with genuine warmth and asking her to thank Thomas too, explaining that she had decided to stay in Nebraska, that she had unexpectedly found a position that was right in a way she hadn't predicted. See, and that she hoped Thomas found exactly the right person for his North Side showroom. See, she meant all of it. The second letter was to her sister in Cedar Rapids, who was the only family she kept regular correspondence with. See, she told her sister she was staying in Red Willow for the foreseeable future. See, that she had a position she was proud of and was building something. See, that she was well. She sealed both envelopes. She posted them in the morning. See, she walked into Beatrice's shop and hung up her coat and sat down at the work table and said, "I'll take the permanent position." See, and when you're ready to talk about the partnership, I'll be ready for that conversation. See, Beatrice said, "Good, no ceremony, no performance." See, just the flat, satisfied word of a woman who had been waiting a reasonable amount of time for a reasonable answer and was pleased to have received it. See, Clara threaded her needle. She had not yet told Rhett. See, he came back from the ranch on Friday evening, and she saw him from the boarding house step where she was sitting with her. Mending, the evening was warm for early July, and the light had the amber depth that sometimes came at that hour. See, the kind that made ordinary things look briefly extraordinary, and which she had learned not to trust as a sign of anything. See, he saw her and altered his direction without hesitation. See, he looked tired. The ranch kind of tired, not broken, not beaten, but run through. See, dust along his collar, his hat pushed back a little further than usual. See, he sat on the bench. She kept her mending in her lap. See, "You've decided something," he said. He said it the way people sometimes say things they've been sitting with on a long ride home, not as an accusation, not as a question, just a plain statement of what he could see. "See, I have," she said. He laced his hands together and looked at the street and did not ask. See, she watched him not ask and felt something in her chest make room for something larger than it had been holding before. "See, I rode to Iowa today," she said. "I declined." He was still. "See, I'm taking Beatrice's offer." She kept her voice even. "See, reporting facts. I'm staying in Red Willow. I've decided." "See, it's decided." She could see the stillness in him, managing something, not managing to conceal it. She was well past believing he could fully conceal anything, but managing to hold it at a volume that didn't spill over. See, his hands tightened once around each other and then released. "See, because of the work," he said, his voice careful. See, making sure. "Because of the work," she said. "Because of Beatrice and what this shop could be, and because of something I said to Martha about starting over without anyone's prior version of me." She paused. "See, Red Willow doesn't have a story about me yet. I get to write the first one." See, he nodded slowly. "Not because of you," she said, and then because accuracy mattered, not only because of you. See, he looked at her then, fully, with no attempt at management. See, she held his gaze and did not qualify what she'd just said and did not retreat from it. See, it was the closest to an admission she had made, and they both knew it, and neither of them said anything else about it because some things, Clara had learned, were better received in silence than dressed up in words that only made them smaller. See, the evening light moved across the street. The mending stayed in her lap. See, and the train ticket, the last one, the one with no firm date, was still in her coat inside, and she realized as she sat there that she had stopped checking whether it was there. See, had stopped orienting toward it the way you orient toward an exit in an unfamiliar room. See, she was still there. She was there because she chose to be there. See, and somewhere under the calm of the evening and the ordinary work in her hands, that fact was enormous, quietly, stubbornly, surprisingly enormous, and it was entirely hers. See, the first week of July arrived like a deadline that had been courteous enough to announce itself. See, Clara felt it in the quality of the mornings. Something in the air had shifted, a dryness that hadn't been there in June. See, a brightness that arrived earlier and stayed harder and made the town look both more real and more temporary at the same time, like a photograph taken in too much light. See, she felt it in the way she worked, too. Faster, more deliberate, with the particular focus that came when she knew what she was building toward, instead of just building. See, the permanent position had changed something in the texture of her days, not dramatically, not overnight, but the way a room changes when you finally hang the pictures instead of leaving them stacked against the wall. See, same room, different feel, yours now in a way it wasn't before. See, Beatrice had given her the number on a Monday morning. See, written on a plain piece of paper, slid across the work table without ceremony. See, Clara had looked at it for 3 seconds, nodded, and said, "That's fair." See, because it was not generous, but fair, and she had long since learned that fair from someone who meant it was worth more than generous, from someone who expected something in return. See, the work itself had expanded. Beatrice was giving her more of the client-facing pieces now, the fittings that required judgment as much as skill. See, the conversations where a woman came in wanting one thing and needed someone to understand what she actually needed and find a way to give her that without making her feel redirected. See, Clara was good at this. She had always been good at this. See, it was the part of the work that required the most of her, and that she found, if she was honest, it's most satisfying not just the technical execution, but the reading of what someone needed and the quiet satisfaction of meeting them there. See, Ruby Holt had come back twice, not for alterations, this time for lessons. See, she had asked, with the same careful non-performing quality that Clara had noticed the first time, whether Clara could teach her some basic mending and construction. See, enough to maintain the clothes she had, she said, and maybe enough to take in small work from neighbors. See, Clara had said yes without consulting Beatrice first, which she realized afterward had been presumptuous. See, Beatrice, when told, had looked at the ceiling briefly and then said, "Fine." See, but not during shop hours. So Ruby came on Saturday mornings, which were quieter, and sat at the secondary table and learned. See, she was a fast learner, not technically gifted, not naturally, but disciplined in the way that people who have had to manage limited resources for a long time were disciplined. See, she did not waste thread. She did not make the same mistake twice. See, she asked questions that were specific and practical, and showed that she had thought about what she didn't know before she asked, which Clara found more valuable in a student than raw talent. See, this was, Clara had begun to understand, what Beatrice had meant at the table by the window. See, not just a place to buy dresses, something more than that. See, the shape of it was becoming visible now, the way a pattern piece became visible when you had enough of the sections not complete yet, but legible. See, she had not told Rhett about Ruby, not because she was keeping it from him, she wasn't, but because their conversations had developed their own natural territories, and the shop was one of hers, the same way the ranch was one of his. See, and she was finding that she liked that about them. See, 2 separate lives that walked in the same direction most afternoons. See, it felt more sustainable than the alternative, which was 2 lives that folded into each other until you couldn't find the seams. See, she was thinking about this specifically. See, about seams and their importance on the Wednesday afternoon when everything that had been slowly building toward something finally built itself into something specific and real and impossible to manage at a careful distance anymore. See, it started with Silas. She ran into him outside the post office. See, this was not, in a town the size of Red Willow, entirely avoidable. She had known it would happen eventually and had been quietly preparing for it the way you prepared for a conversation you didn't want and couldn't prevent. See, she had decided she would be civil, polite, brief. See, she had no grievance with Silas Harrow in the way that made bitterness useful. He hadn't been cruel, hadn't deceived her in the way that required active intent. See, had only failed to listen to what she actually said and assumed that what he wanted was close enough to what she wanted that the difference didn't matter. See, that was a specific kind of failure, and it wasn't small, but it wasn't the kind she needed to carry. See, he saw her first. She could tell because he had the look of a man who has already made several decisions about his face before you notice him looking. "See, Miss Whitmore," he said. "Careful." "Correct, Mr. Harrow," she said. See, equally careful, equally correct. A pause of the kind that could go several directions. See, I heard you're staying on, he said. Working for Beatrice. See, I am. He nodded, looking at a point somewhere near her left shoulder. See, that's good. Good for you. He meant it, she thought. See, it was slightly awkward and slightly pained, but he meant it. See, she's a fair woman, Beatrice. She is, Clara agreed. See, another pause. Silas shifted his weight. He was a decent-looking man, she had thought so in the first days, before everything else arrived to complicate the assessment. See, tidy. Careful with himself. The kind of man who would be reliably present and reliably difficult to know. See, I owe you an apology, he said. He said it to the point near her shoulder, then corrected and said it to her face. See, what I did writing to your clients without telling you. See, that was wrong. I understand that now. A breath. I understood it when you said it, actually. See, I just didn't know how to say so at the time. Clara looked at him. See, I appreciate that, Mr. Harrow. I had an idea of what things would look like, he said. See, I held on to it longer than the evidence supported. He said it like a man who had thought about this quite a bit and had finally located the accurate words for it. See, that wasn't fair to you. No, she said kindly. See, it wasn't. She paused. But I think we both came to that with some prior expectations that didn't fit the actual situation. See, letters are an incomplete picture. He almost smiled. See, not quite, but almost. That's generous. It's accurate, she said. See, which is what I'd rather be. He nodded, looked away again. See, looked back. I hope Red Willow has been a better experience than it started as. See, it has, she said. Quite a bit better. They said their good days and parted, and Clara walked the rest of the way to the shop with the specific lightness that came when a thing you'd been carrying for a while was found to weigh less than expected. See, not nothing, but less than she'd thought. The conversation with Silas would not require a second one, she felt sure of that. See, they would nod at each other in the street going forward. See, it would be adequate. It would be, in its limited way, fine. See, she had enough energy left over to feel, quietly and to herself alone, that the version of her who had gotten off the train in Red Willow, expecting a husband, had been someone she understood but was no longer quite responsible for. See, that woman had done her best with what she knew. This one was working with more. See, what happened 2 days later was not something she saw coming. See, it should have been unremarkable. A Thursday afternoon, the shop busy in the way, it was increasingly busy as word moved through the town that Beatrice's had a second pair of skilled hands. See, a woman came in, a Mrs. Aldrich, newer to town, from somewhere east, with the particular quality of someone who had been accustomed to better options than a small frontier shop and was making decision about whether to revise her standards. See, Clara had encountered this type before. It required patience and a specific quality of unapologetic competence, which Clara had no difficulty providing. See, she was in the middle of showing Mrs. Aldrich the quality of a particular bolt of wool, explaining the weight and the weave. See, the way the color would hold through multiple seasons when the door opened and a woman she didn't recognize came in and looked immediately at Clara with the directness of someone who had been told exactly who they were looking for. See, she was perhaps 45, well-dressed but practical, with the kind of posture that said she had worked for it. See, behind her, to Clara's surprise, was a man she recognized as Hank Devereaux, one of the other hands from the Alderman Ranch, not someone she knew well, but someone she had seen twice with Rhett. See, "You're Clara Whitmore?" the woman said. "I am," Clara said, keeping her attention balanced between this new arrival and Mrs. See, Aldridge, who was watching with interest. "Elsa Alderman," the woman said. See, "I own the spread Rhett Calder works for." Clara absorbed this. See, Mrs. Alderman. "I need to talk to you," Elsa Alderman said. See, not rudely, there was no particular edge in it, but with the firmness of a woman who had been running a cattle operation for 20 years and had stopped prefacing things with unnecessary softness. See, Clara excused herself from Mrs. Aldridge smoothly, professionally, with an assurance that she'd return to the wool question in a moment and move to the far end of the counter. See, Elsa Alderman studied her with the same practical assessment she probably gave to anything she was evaluating. See, I'll be direct, she said. I'd prefer it, Clara said. See, Rhett Calder has worked for me for 9 years. He's one of the 3 best hands I've ever had. See, he's reliable, he's skilled, and he doesn't complain. She paused. See, he's also, in the past 2 months, been the most distracted employee I have had in recent memory, which is saying something given that I once employed a man who was convinced a particular cloud formation was following him personally. See, Clara kept her expression neutral. I'm not sure what you think I can do about that. See, I don't think you can do anything about it, Elsa said. See, I'm not here to ask you to. I'm here because She paused. See, shifted slightly. This part was harder for her, Clara could see. See, he's going to do something stupid. Clara's neutral expression became slightly less neutral. See, what kind of stupid? The kind where he decides that the thing he wants most is about to leave and he makes a large gesture to prevent it. See, Elsa Alderman looked at her with the frank gaze of a woman who had watched a lot of men make large gestures over the years and had strong opinions about their efficacy. See, he hasn't told me this. He wouldn't, but I know Rhett. See, and I know the look of a man who is winding himself up toward doing something he thinks of is brave, and that will actually be the wrong thing entirely. See, Clara was quiet for a moment. He grabbed my wrist on the platform the first day I was here, she said. See, I know. He told me. Elsa Alderman's mouth moved. See, not quite a smile, something more rueful. He was mortified about it for a week. See, I've never seen a man apologize for something more thoroughly in my life, and I heard most of it secondhand. See, he apologized to me directly, Clara said. I know that too. See, then what's the concern? Elsa Alderman looked at her steadily. See, the concern is that the man has been trying very hard not to repeat the platform. See, which is right, which is good. But there's a point where trying not to do the wrong thing and not doing anything start to look the same, and the pressure builds, and then something large happens. She paused. See, I'm not saying it will. I'm saying I've watched him circling something for 2 months, and whatever he's circling has a date attached to it, and I think the date is soon. See, Clara thought about Rhett at the boarding house step, the evening she'd told him she'd declined Iowa. See, the way his hands had tightened and released, the roughness in his voice saying okay and meaning it. See, the deliberate stillness of a man holding himself very carefully in place. See, she thought about how much effort that kind of stillness required. See, how much it cost. Thank you for telling me, she said. See, I'm not telling you to do anything specific, Elsa said. See, I don't have advice. He's a good man. He's trying to be a better one, for reasons I think are standing right in front of me. She paused. See, I didn't want the trying to blow up, because nobody said anything. See, she nodded once, turned, and walked out of the shop with Hank trailing behind her. See, Clara stood at the far end of the counter for a moment. See, then she turned back to Mrs. Aldridge, who had been examining the wool bolt with the elaborate attention of someone pretending they hadn't heard every word. See, the weave, Clara said, picking up exactly where she'd left off, will hold the color through at least 3 winters, if it's stored correctly. See, Mrs. Aldridge bought 2 yards. See, she thought about what Elsa Alderman had said for the rest of the day, and through supper, and into the night, lying in the narrow boarding house bed, with the lamp out, and the window, letting in the sounds of the summer evening. See, she thought about what it would mean practically, specifically if Rhett did something large. See, if he showed up at the shop with some declaration, or went to Martha's, or made some gesture that was essentially the same gesture as the platform, wrapped in better intentions. See, she thought about how she would feel, and was honest with herself about the answers, which was more complicated than she would have preferred. See, she would feel somewhere in her, a pull. She knew that. See, she had stopped pretending she didn't. She would also feel what she had felt on the platform, that specific, clarifying fury at being moved by someone else's action, at having her own internal weather changed by something external. See, even if it was well-intentioned, even if she wanted the outcome it was gesturing toward. See, there was something about being moved that felt different from choosing to move. See, she had spent 11 years learning to tell those two things apart. See, the question was what to do with all of this. She was good, in general, at knowing what she thought. See, less practiced at knowing what she wanted, because she had spent so long living in the territory between what she wanted and what was practical that she had built something like a wall between the two and stopped expecting them to align. See, what she wanted. She turned over in the bed and stared at the ceiling. See, what she wanted was for Rhett Calder to keep being the man who had said all right when she said no and walked away without a debate. See, the man who corrected Hank Devereaux's husband in the barber shop and didn't tell her about it to earn credit. See, the man who left wool on a work table with a note that said it wasn't the right color and was honest about that. See, the man who walked beside her most afternoons, not holding her hand, not asking for more than she'd offered, present in the careful, sustained way of someone who had decided that her actual freedom mattered more than his comfort. See, that was what she wanted. She was also, lying in the dark, willing to acknowledge something she had been moving around for weeks, that what she wanted and what was currently happening were not actually as far apart as she kept insisting. See, the distance between them was mostly her own construction. See, she had built it deliberately because deliberateness was what she knew and what had protected her. See, and because the cost of not building it, the cost of letting herself want something that could fail, was a cost she had paid before and still felt in certain weather. See, but she was staying in Red Willow. She had declined Iowa. See, she had taken Beatrice's position. She was teaching Ruby Holt to mend. See, she had done all of these things without accounting for Rhett Calder as a primary reason, and that was true, and she was proud of that. See, and it was also true that the town he was in had weighed something in the accounting she hadn't fully written down. See, the question was not whether she wanted him in her life. See, the question was whether she was willing to say so before he did something large that would make it impossible for her to know if what followed was her choice or his momentum. See, she fell asleep on that question and woke up with it still there, patient and persistent, the way the important ones always were. See, she found him on Friday evening at the bench outside the boarding house. See, he wasn't there waiting for her specifically, or he was, but he had made it look like he'd just arrived, which she found both transparent and touching. See, because he was bad at the social performances that other people executed smoothly and had apparently given up trying to be good at them around her. See, he stood when he saw her. She sat on the step, he sat on the bench. See, this was their usual configuration, and settling into it felt like putting on a coat that fit the particular comfort of something that had taken on the shape of you. See, Elsa Alderman came to see me yesterday, she said. See, she watched his face. What happened on it was complicated and rapid, and she caught most of it before he managed to arrange it into something more controlled. See, surprise. Then something that was specifically embarrassment, the kind that didn't come from being caught doing something wrong, but from being known more thoroughly than you'd planned. See, then resignation. Then underneath all of it, something quieter. See, she shouldn't have done that, he said. She did it because she was concerned about you. See, I know why she did it. He rubbed the back of his neck. See, what did she say? That you were winding towards something. See, that she was worried you'd do something large and that it would be the wrong thing. See, he was quiet for a moment. She's not wrong. What were you going to do? Clara said. See, directly, because they had moved past the territory where indirect approaches were honest. See, he looked at the street, then at his hands, then at her, with the particular resigned courage of a man who has decided that the truth, however uncomfortable, is at least accurate. See, I was going to go to the station, he said. I had it in my head that with July 15 coming, he stopped. See, I changed my ticket, she said. I haven't had a date on my ticket in weeks. See, I know. He exhaled. I know that. I still had July 15 in my head, the original date, and I kept imagining I kept seeing the platform. See, the first morning, and I didn't want to be not there. He paused. See, but I also knew I know that showing up isn't the same as respecting what you want. See, I've been trying to work out how those two things fit together, and the answer I kept landing on was that they didn't. See, that I had to pick one. What were you going to do at the station? She said. See, tell you what I wanted. Make it clear. He said it without elaboration, without decoration. See, and then not touch you, not ask you to stay, not do any of the things I'd do if I was the man I was 2 months ago, a beat. See, just say it and let it be whatever it was. Clara looked at him. See, the evening was doing the amber thing again with the light, and she had decided to stop mistrusting it. See, Rhett, she said. It was the first time she had used his first name without the Mr. preceding it, and she felt him register it a small stillness, like something settling. See, yeah, he said, I'm not going to July 15, she said. See, I'm not going anywhere. I signed papers with Beatrice this week, and I'm staying in Red Willow, and that's decided. She looked at him steadily. See, and I would like you to tell me what you want. Not at the station. See, here now. His jaw shifted, the thinking and not hiding it look. See, he laced his hands together over his knees and then unlaced them. See, I want to keep walking with you, he said, most afternoons. See, I want to know what the shop becomes. I want to hear about Ruby Holt and the Saturday lessons that I'm not supposed to know about, but Martha told me anyway. He stopped. See, started again. I want to be around when you're around. See, not in the way that not like I want to own any part of that. See, I know what that looks like and I know it's not what I want. He looked at her with a directness that cost him something. See, I want to be there for whatever you'll let me be there for. See, and whatever you won't let me be there, for I'll live with that too. See, Clara sat with this for a moment. She thought about the man on the platform with his hand in the air. See, she thought about all the distance between that man and this one, not a different person, the same person, but rearranged by weeks of hard internal work, by the decision, repeated daily, see, to hold himself to a different standard than his first instinct. See, she thought about the wall she had built between what she wanted and what was practical. See, she thought, the wall has served its purpose. I'm going to keep the Saturdays for Ruby, she said. See, you should, he said immediately, and I'm not going to compromise the work. See, not for anyone, not the hours, not the focus, not the plans I'm making with Beatrice. See, I wouldn't ask you to. I know you wouldn't ask. She looked at him carefully. See, I'm telling you because I need it said plainly, so there's no version of this where I look back and wonder if I was understood. See, you're understood, he said. Plain level, every word. See, she nodded. She looked at the street. She had made plans all her life. See, careful, layered, contingency-aware plans that anticipated the places where things could go wrong and built paths around them. See, it had served her. It had kept her solvent and independent and in charge of her own trajectory for 11 years, and she was not going to stop being that person. See, she was also, right now, sitting on a step in a prairie town in the blue dusk of a July evening. See, and the person on the bench beside her was a man who had made every mistake in the wrong direction and then turned around and walked back toward the right ones, slowly and without being asked. See, she had not planned for that. Some things you didn't plan for. See, you just recognized them when they showed up and decided whether to let them in. See, ask me to walk with you tomorrow, she said. He looked at her. See, the something under the surface of his face, the structural support of the smile, the one she had seen weeks ago, and that she knew the shape of now, was fully present. See, would you walk with me tomorrow, he said. Yes, she said. See, she stood, gathered her things, went inside. She did not perform the moment. See, didn't look back, didn't linger on the step. She had said what she meant and meant what she said and left it there, solid and real, requiring nothing additional. See, from behind the curtain of the front window, Martha watched Rhett Calder sit on that bench for a full 10 minutes after Clara went inside, not moving, looking at the street. See, then she saw his shoulders drop not in defeat, but in the way that shoulders drop when something a person has been holding very tensely for a very long time is finally allowed to settle into a different position. See, Martha went back to her book. She did not say anything at breakfast the next morning. See, she did refill Clara's coffee without being asked, which was its own kind of comment. See, the walk the next day was not different from the ones before it. See, that was the thing Clara noticed, and noticed with something that felt like relief. See, they walked the same route, talked about the same kinds of things. See, he told her about a dispute among the ranch hands about the correct way to repair a specific kind of post and rail fence. See, which had apparently become a matter of some philosophical intensity among grown men who had spent too long in each other's company. See, she told him about a customer who had brought in a dress she insisted had been improperly made by Beatrice 2 years ago, and the particular diplomatic operation required to explain that the dress had simply been worn heavily and not maintained. See, he laughed at the fence story, the rough, not quite decided laugh she had catalogued by now. See, she laughed at the fence story too. At the point where their routes separated, they stopped. See, he turned toward her. He did not reach for her, did not close the distance. See, just turned toward her in the late afternoon light as if to say, I see you. See, I'm not taking anything that isn't offered. Same time Monday, he said. See, she had an appointment Monday afternoon. She told him so. See, Tuesday, she said. Tuesday, he agreed. She walked home. See, the town moved around her, the daily business of a small place going about its evening, and she moved through it, as she had been moving through it for weeks, as someone who belonged here. See, not because anyone had decided she did, not because someone had claimed her, or vouched for her, or given her the credential of his name. See, because she had stayed long enough to build it herself. See, the shop was hers, the position was hers, the decision to be here was hers. See, and Tuesday when it came would be hers too. Tuesday came with clouds. See, not the dramatic kind, not the stacked theatrical clouds that rolled in from the west, when a real storm was building, but the low, gray, undecided kind that couldn't commit to rain, and so just sat there over the town. See, making everything look like a photograph taken in uncertain light. See, Clara noticed them when she opened the boarding house window in the morning, noticed them again when she walked to the shop, and decided they suited her mood in a way she couldn't entirely account for because her mood was not bad. See, it was something more complicated than bad. It was the mood of a person standing at the edge of something they have chosen and are not afraid of, and are nonetheless aware is large. See, she worked through the morning with her full attention, which was the only way she knew how to work. See, there was a wedding order that had become complicated. The bride's mother had strong opinions about sleeve construction that were technically incorrect and required careful management, and there was Ruby's lesson at the end of the week to prepare. See, materials for, and there was a letter from Beatrice's supplier in St. See, Louis that needed a response regarding the fall fabric order. See, these were all real specific things that required her, and she gave them what they required. See, by noon the clouds had thickened without resolving. See, by 2 in the afternoon, when the shop had its usual midday lull, Beatrice made tea without asking and set a cup at Clara's elbow and said, "You've repressed that same collar 3 times. See, Clara looked at the collar. She had in fact pressed it 3 times. See, I'm being thorough, she said. Beatrice made the sound. See, the sound. The one she shared with Martha that apparently conveyed entire paragraphs. See, Clara put down the collar. I told Rhett Calder I would walk with him today, she said. See, I know, Beatrice said. She was looking at a bolt of spring fabric with the expression of a woman conducting a private verdict on it. See, you told me about the appointment you had Monday when you explained why it was Tuesday. See, right, Clara picked up her tea. I told him what I wanted. See, what I was willing to let happen. She paused. Now I'm waiting to see who he is when I stop being something to wait for. See, Beatrice set down the bolt. Looked at her. That's the right question, she said. See, most women don't think to ask it. Most women don't have the option, Clara said. See, they need the man decided before they can decide anything themselves. See, Beatrice was quiet for a moment. Is that what this has been? Making sure you could decide yourself first. See, yes, Clara said. Then, because it was Beatrice, and Beatrice deserved the full thing, and making sure he understood that. See, not just accepted it for now as a condition of getting something he wanted. See, actually understood it. And do you think he does? See, Clara thought about the bench, the Friday evening. See, the way he had listed what he wanted with his hands unlaced and his voice rough and no performance in it anywhere. See, the way he had said you're understood without elaborating, because he'd recognized that elaborating would have made it about him. See, I think he's closer to understanding it than anyone I've encountered, she said. See, which is not the same as perfect. I'm not asking for perfect. See, good, Beatrice said. Perfect is a waste of everyone's time. See, she went back to the bolt of spring fabric. Clara went back to the collar, which she pressed once more correctly this time, with her full attention where it belonged. See, he was waiting at the corner of Main and 2nd, not at the shop, not at the boarding house, at the corner that was exactly the midpoint between both, see, which she recognized as deliberate and which she registered with the part of her that noticed deliberate things and filed them without comment. See, he looked like himself. She had thought about this, in the abstract, what it would feel like to see him today, after Friday, after the things that had been said, and had expected it to feel different in some significant way. See, it felt different in the way that the same landscape feels different in a different season. See, the basic shapes were all identical. The quality of light had changed. See, hey, he said. Hey, she said. They started walking. See, it was, from the outside, identical to every other walk they had taken. See, anyone watching from a shop window or a second-story room would have seen two people moving in the same direction at the same pace, talking. See, nothing remarkable about it, and yet everything inside it was rearranged, and they both knew it, and neither of them performed ignorance of that fact, and neither of them made it into something larger than it needed to be at that exact moment. See, he told her about a new horse at the Alderman Ranch, a young one, not yet trained, with an opinion about everything and a willingness to communicate those opinions at volume. See, she told him about the bride's mother and the sleeve construction disagreement. See, he laughed. She found she was smiling before she decided to. See, how did you settle it? He said. I made a small modification to the original design that addressed her concern without changing the line of the sleeve, Clara said. See, she thinks she won. The sleeve is structurally correct. See, the bride is happy. Everyone has what they actually needed, if not necessarily what they thought they wanted. See, he looked at her sideways. You do that a lot. What? See, find the version of things where everyone gets what they need without anyone having to lose something they care about. He said it observationally, not as a compliment, exactly more like a man noting a feature of the terrain. See, I've been watching you do it for months, with customers. See, with Beatrice. He stopped. With you? She said. See, he looked ahead. I was going to say with the town in general. See, but yeah, with me too. She considered this. Is that a problem? See, no, he said. I just wonder sometimes if there's something you want that you don't try to make fit for everybody else first. See, it was, she realized, a genuinely perceptive question. See, uncomfortably perceptive, the kind that landed because it had identified something real. See, she walked for a few steps before answering. The shop, she said. See, what it's becoming. What I told Beatrice, I want it to be not just a dress shop, but something where women learn what their work is worth. She paused. See, I didn't fit that to anyone. That's mine start to finish. See, he nodded. Good, he said, same way Beatrice said it. See, the flat, satisfied word. She glanced at him. You're not going to ask what it looks like, what I mean by it. See, I figured you'd tell me when you wanted to. She looked ahead at the street. See, Ruby Holt. The lessons on Saturdays. Beatrice wants to formalize it, make it a regular thing, not just informal teaching. See, there are other women who need it. Women who came here with a husband, or came here looking for one, and found themselves without either the husband or the skills to earn their own way. She paused. See, I want to change that, specifically, in this town. See, he was quiet for a moment. How a class? A structured one. See, basic construction, alterations, enough to take in piecework or maintain a household wardrobe properly. See, Beatrice has the space on Saturday mornings. See, we'd need fabric donated or sold at cost for the learning pieces. She stopped because she was accelerating, and she knew it, the way she always accelerated when she talked about something she cared about without reserve. See, keep going, he said. She looked at him. Keep going, he said again. See, not impatiently with attention, the real kind, so she kept going. See, she told him the whole of it, the shape, as she'd been developing it in her own mind for the past 2 weeks, the practical obstacles and how she thought they might be addressed, the women she'd identified who might benefit from it. See, the conversation she still needed to have with Beatrice about costs. See, she talked for almost the whole of the route without stopping, and he walked beside her and listened with the quality of listening she had been trying to find words for since she first noticed it in him, not waiting for his turn. See, not preparing a response, just taking it in like it mattered. See, when she finished, they were at the point where their routes separated, and she hadn't noticed the walk passing, which almost never happened. See, that's good work, he said. It's not done yet. I know. See, it's still good work. She looked at him. Elsa Alderman told me you were the best hand she'd had in 9 years. See, he blinked. She said that when she came to the shop. See, I thought you should know, since she probably won't say it to you. See, something moved in his face that wasn't quite embarrassment and wasn't quite pride, but was in the neighborhood of both. See, she keeps a lot of opinions to herself, he said. See, I noticed. Clara paused. She came to warn me about you out of loyalty to you. See, that's not nothing. He looked at the street. No, he said. See, it's not. A beat of quiet. Rhett, she said. He looked at her. See, I want to show you something, she said. Not today. See, when it's ready. The class, when we've set it up properly, I want you to see it. See, his face did the structural thing. The thing underneath the surface. See, okay, he said. Because it'll be mine, she said. See, and I've decided I want you to know what that looks like. See, he stood at the corner in the undecided gray light, and she could see the weight of what she'd just said going through him, not overwhelming him, but registering. See, landing somewhere it would stay. I'd like that, he said. See, she nodded, turned toward the shop. Clara, he said. See, she stopped, turned back. He was standing with his hands at his sides, not reaching, not gesturing. See, just standing there, saying what he'd decided to say. See, I'm glad you stayed, he said, not because of me. See, because of what you're doing with it. She looked at him for a moment. See, me too, she said. She walked back to the shop in the gray afternoon light and felt in her chest the particular quality of a thing that was exactly the size it was supposed to be, not inflated, not performing, just real and solid in hers. See, August arrived, and with it the class. See, it was not, in its first form, anything close to what Clara eventually wanted it to be. See, 6 women, 2 hours on Saturday morning, a table that was only the right size if everyone sat with consideration for the person next to them, which required its own early lesson in communal space. See, the donated fabric was a mixed assortment, some of it genuinely good, some of it so poor that Clara used it as a teaching tool for how to identify quality before you committed to a project. See, Ruby Holt was there, 3 weeks ahead of the others, which she wore with a quietness that Clara recognized as its own kind of earned confidence. See, there was a woman named Patricia, 38, whose husband had left in the spring and who had never in her life earned money outside a household. See, she came the first Saturday with the particular expression of someone who had promised themselves they would not cry in public and was working very hard to keep that promise. See, she didn't cry. She did manage, by the end of the 2 hours, to complete a hem that was even on both sides, which she examined with the solemnity of a person who has just proved something to themselves. See, there was a woman named Dot, 61, who had been sewing her whole life, and came not to learn but because her granddaughter was in the class, and she didn't think the girl should go alone. See, Dot turned out to have technique that was faster than Clara's in certain operations. See, and by the 3rd week, Clara had started the unofficial habit of asking Dot to demonstrate the straight seam joins because her hands moved with an authority that Clara's teaching couldn't replicate only. See, years could replicate it, and there was no shortcut. See, Clara was not above asking for help. See, she had learned in the 11 years of running her own shop that people who couldn't ask for help when they needed it usually ended up surrounded by work done incorrectly, which cost more to fix than the asking would have cost in the first place. See, Beatrice appeared on the second Saturday, ostensibly to fetch something from the back cabinet. See, she stayed for 40 minutes. She didn't say anything. See, at the end she went to the back cabinet, got the thing she'd come for, and left. See, the following week she appeared again and stayed longer and still said nothing, only watched with the expression of a woman checking the quality of something she'd invested in. See, on the fourth Saturday she sat down next to Dot. Clara pretended not to notice. See, by October they had moved to a larger table. See, the town's opinion of Clara Whitmore changed in the way that small-town opinions changed, not with any announcement, not on any particular date, but gradually and then suddenly, like weather. See, one week she was still, to some corners of Red Willow's social geography, the woman whose engagement to Silas Harrow had failed. See, the next week, or what felt like the next week, though it was probably longer, she was the woman who ran the Saturday class at Beatrice's shop. See, the woman who had turned a temporary position into something that was quietly and demonstrably changing how certain women in the town thought about themselves and their options. See, these were not the same narrative. She noticed the shift not in grand gestures, but in the small, specific way people addressed her. See, women who had offered her tight smiles in the dry goods store in July were lingering to ask about the class by September. See, a woman whose name Clara didn't know stopped her on the street in October to say that her daughter had told her about the hem she'd finished, and that it was the first thing the girl had made herself in her life, and she'd worn it every day since. See, Clara said she was glad. She meant it completely. See, Ida Marsh, the woman from the dry goods store, who had told Clara that Rhett was quite taken with her and called her the right woman to settle him down, came into the shop in late September for a dress alteration. See, she said nothing about their previous exchange. Neither did Clara. See, the alteration was done correctly and at a fair price, and they parted on terms that were, if not warm, entirely functional. See, some things resolved that way. See, not with reconciliation or understanding, but with the practical dignity of two people deciding that what had happened between them was small enough relative to the size of their continued proximity that it was better set down than carried. See, Clara had made her peace with that kind of resolution. See, it was actually more honest than the performed forgiveness that required the other person to be fully redeemed before you could stop being angry. See, some people were just what they were. You gave them their fair treatment and your professional best, and you let the rest of it go. See, Silas Harrow began keeping company with a woman named Helen Vance in September. See, Clara heard about it from Martha, who mentioned it over breakfast with the same tone she used for all information factual, neither embellished nor minimized. See, Helen's a good woman, Martha said. She's been wanting to keep a proper home for years. She's excellent at it. Does it by choice, not by default. A pause. See, she'll suit him. Good, Clara said. She meant that too. See, she had thought, in the weeks after the engagement ended, that she might feel something complicated when Silas moved on. See, a kind of retroactive injury, maybe, or the sting of replacement. See, but what she actually felt, hearing Martha's account, was something closer to relief. See, not because she had wanted him to be unhappy she hadn't, but because his finding the right match closed the last uncomfortable gap in the story. See, he hadn't been wrong to want what he wanted. She hadn't been wrong to refuse to provide it. See, the problem had been the mismatch, which was nobody's fault in the way that requires a villain, and with Helen Vance apparently making him happy, the mismatch was fully resolved. See, Clara told Rhett that evening. He received it in the thoughtful, undramatic way. He received most things now, which was still not entirely natural for him, she could tell. See, he was still, underneath the acquired stillness, a man whose first instinct was to act, to move, to do something with whatever he felt. See, he had learned to slow the gap between feeling and action, which was a harder thing to learn than people who hadn't tried it understood. See, she had watched him do it across months and had a specific appreciation for what it cost. See, that's good for him, Rhett said. Yes. And for you? See, she considered. It closes something, she said. Something I didn't realize was still open. See? He nodded. They were at the boarding house step, and the bench, as had become their habit on evenings when neither of them had somewhere else to be, which was most evenings now. See, the familiarity of it had become its own kind of conversation, the comfort that didn't require words, the shared space that wasn't claimed by either of them and was therefore fully available to both. See, there's something I want to ask you, he said. She looked at him. See, he was doing the hands unlaced thing. Not nervous or not only nervous. See, present. Awake. All right, she said. I want to take you to dinner, he said. See, not just walking dinner. At the restaurant on 3rd Street, he paused. See, a proper thing, if you want that. Clara looked at him for a moment. See, she thought about what it would mean, the visibility of it, the way a dinner at a proper restaurant in a small town had a particular legibility that an afternoon walk did not. See, people would see it, would understand what it meant. See, would add it to their existing understanding of who she was and who she was with. See, she thought about whether she cared. She had spent a long time managing the town's narrative about her. See, being careful about what she made visible and when. See, protecting, specifically, the understanding that she was there on her own terms and that Rhett was not a reason she was there. See, that was still true. It was also true that she had been there for 4 months. See, had a permanent position, had built the class, had declined Iowa and made her peace with Silas and walked enough afternoons to have worn a familiar shape into the route. See, she was not a woman passing through anymore. She was a woman who had arrived. See, and a woman who had arrived could have dinner. Yes, she said. See, he looked at her as if he needed a second to be sure he'd heard correctly. See, Friday, she said. 7 o'clock Friday, he said. See, 7. He said it the way he said things he intended to keep flat and final and without decoration. See, she had come to understand that as one of his most reliable qualities. See, he was not a man who decorated his commitments. He made them plainly and held them the same way. See, dinner on Friday was slightly awkward in the way that first formal things often were. The restaurant was nice by Red Willow standards, which meant it was clean, and the food was real, and the linen on the tables had been recently pressed. See, and Clara had worn her best day dress because she hadn't brought anything specifically for evenings, and she was not the kind of woman who bought a dress for a single occasion. See, Rhett had cleaned up thoroughly and was wearing a jacket she hadn't seen before, which he wore with the slight self-consciousness of a man who did not own many jackets and was aware of the gap in his experience. See, they got through the first 15 minutes on the slight awkwardness of formal context. See, and then something shifted, some internal negotiation that they both completed privately and around the same time, and it became simply 2 people having dinner. See, he asked about the class, and she told him. She asked about Governor, the opinionated horse, and he told her. See, the food was good enough. The tea was better than the restaurant's usual, which Clara suspected was because the owner had noticed who was dining there and made an effort which she appreciated without saying anything about. See, at some point near the end of the meal he said, "Can I ask you something?" See, "You can ask me anything," she said. "I'll tell you if it's something I'll answer." See, he almost smiled at that. Almost. "Are you happy here?" See, she sat with the question, not because it was complicated, but because she wanted to answer it accurately. See, "I'm building something I'm proud of," she said. See, "That's the closest thing I know to happy that I trust." See, the other kind, the kind that's just a feeling it comes and goes, and I've been disappointed enough times by what I thought it was promising to not put much weight on it alone. She looked at him. See, but the building, the work, the class, the shop, what this town is starting to look like from inside instead of passing through. She paused. See, that's real. That I trust. He looked at her with the full, unmanaged attention that was one of the things she had catalogued about him and never said. See, and the other kind, he said quietly. She held his gaze. See, it's also there, she said. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. See, The not-quite smile arrived. The real version this time, the full one, and it changed his face in the way she had known for a while. It would rougher than handsome, but completely genuine. See, the kind of smile that you believed immediately because it wasn't trying to be anything other than what it was. See, okay, he said. She looked away. Outside the window, the street was going quiet with the fall evening. See, the clouds from Tuesday had finally done something the weather had turned, a proper autumn settling in, the particular cool and color of a Nebraska October that she realized, been looking forward to without naming it. See, she had come in summer. She was staying through the seasons. See, he asked her to marry him on a Sunday in November. See, not at the depot, not in the shop, not at Martha's boarding house steps where they had spent so many evenings. See, he asked her in the most ordinary possible place on the street outside the post office, which they had both stopped at for separate reasons and happened to leave at the same time. See, which was the kind of accidental convergence that had stopped feeling accidental after the first 50 times it happened. See, he did not kneel. She would have found that embarrassing for both of them. See, he stopped on the boardwalk and turned to face her and said, with his hands at his sides and nothing decorated about it, "I want to marry you." See, if that's something you'd want, you don't have to answer now. See, she looked at him. The boardwalk was not empty, it was a Sunday. People were moving in both directions, and two women she recognized from the class passed close enough to hear. See, though they kept walking with the practiced discretion of people who wanted to hear the answer but knew better than to stop and wait for it. See, she thought about what she was being asked. See, not what the word meant in the general, historical sense. She knew what it had meant for most women for most of history. And she had seen what it meant for Silas Harrow's idea of a wife and had said no to that completely. See, she thought about what it meant in the specific, this man, this town, this life she had built and intended to continue building, with a person beside her who had learned at real cost to himself the difference between presence and possession. See, she thought about whether there was anything she was afraid of. See, there was. She was honest enough to know it. The fear that circumstances would shift and old patterns would return. See, the fear that the man who had learned restraint would one day stop feeling like learning it was necessary. See, she had seen enough of life and of people to know that character was not permanent just because it was currently real. See, people changed in both directions. But she also thought about the 9 months since the platform. See, about a man who had made every mistake wrong end first and then spent months reversing his own momentum. See, who had let her build an entire life in a town while he waited at the edge of it, neither claiming her nor disappearing, which was a harder position to hold than either extreme. See, who had told Elsa Alderman's ranch hand's husband to correct himself in a barber shop. See, who had left wool on a table with an honest note, who had said you're understood and meant it in the most specific sense, not understood as a courtesy, understood as a fact he had gone to the trouble of making true. See, that was not a guarantee, but it was the best evidence she had ever seen. See, yes, she said. He blinked. I'm not saying yes to anything except the question you asked, she clarified. See, the shop stays mine, the class stays mine, the Saturdays stay Ruby's. See, the position stays what it is and what it's becoming. See, yes, he said immediately. And I need you to understand not as a condition you're agreeing to in order to get the answer you want, but actually understand that those things are not going to change because of a marriage. See, any more than you'd stop being a ranch hand because of one. See, I understand, he said. He said it the way he said things he meant. See, plain, no decoration. She looked at him for a long moment. See, then yes, she said again. He exhaled. It was not a polished moment. See, his shoulders dropped the way they'd dropped on the bench after Friday evening, that particular release of something long and tensely held. See, and his eyes went briefly bright in a way she wasn't going to make a thing of, because he would have found that uncomfortable, and she respected his discomfort. See, okay, he said. His voice was not entirely steady. See, okay, she said. See. They walked back in the direction of the shop because she had work this afternoon, and he had to get back to the ranch before sundown, and the world did not pause for moments like this one, which was, she had always felt, entirely correct. See, the world's refusal to pause was actually what made moments matter. See, they had to exist inside the ordinary movement of everything, or they were just theater. See, she told Martha that evening. Martha's response was to put down her book, look at Clara for a full 5 seconds, and say, "Good." Then she picked up her book again. See, Clara stood in the doorway of the sitting room for a moment. See, is that all you have to say? "I've been watching this happen since July," Martha said, without looking up. See, "I've already done all my thinking about it. The good is the conclusion." See, Clara almost laughed. She went up to her room and sat at the desk and took out her writing things, and she wrote to her sister in Cedar Rapids, not a long letter, just a practical one. See, with the facts and the timeline, and a request that her sister not make it larger than it was in her response. See, her sister was a woman who made things larger. Clara loved her and managed this about her as best she could. See, she told Beatrice the next morning. Beatrice set down the bolt of fabric she was examining, looked at Clara with the frank gaze of a woman reviewing information, and said, "Does it change your hours?" See, "No." "Does it change the partnership conversation?" See, "No." "Does it change anything about the class?" "No." See, Beatrice picked up the bolt. "Then congratulations," she said. See, "and don't let it change your hours." See, they married in December, small by choice and by honest preference rather than necessity. See, Martha and Beatrice. Elsa Alderman, who came in her work clothes because she had been at the ranch until the morning and had not had time to change, which was, Clara thought, probably the most appropriate thing she could have worn. See, Ruby Holt, who stood in the back with her children pressed against her sides, and a look on her face like someone watching something they decided was proof of something. See, Dot, who wore her good dress and sat in the front because she had decided she was entitled to, and nobody argued with Dot. See, Hank Devereaux. 2 other ranch hands whose names Clara had learned in the fall, and whose presence Rhett seemed both pleased by and slightly surprised by. See, which told her something about how men communicated their significance to each other, not directly, apparently, but through attendance. See, Silas Harrow was not there. He sent a brief, formal, entirely correct note of congratulation. See, Clara wrote back a brief, formal, entirely correct response. See, that was the right amount of communication for that particular relationship, and they both knew it. See, the ceremony was short. Clara had no patience for length in ceremonies. The meaning was either there or it wasn't, and if it was there, you didn't need 45 minutes to establish it. See, they said what needed to be said. It was witnessed. See, it was done. Rhett held her hand during the ceremony with the same quality she had noticed every physical gesture he'd made since the early weeks present, without pressure, there without claiming, holding without gripping. See, she had not told him she'd noticed this. She thought it was probably something he was doing without knowing he was doing it, which made it more reliable, not less. See, after, Martha served food at the boarding house because that was where Clara still lived, and would live for another 2 months until the arrangement with the small house on 4th Street was finalized. See, it was not elegant. The food was practical and plentiful, which was Martha's version of celebration, and which Clara appreciated more than elegant would have been. See, Rhett, at some point in the middle of the afternoon, ended up at the corner of the room with Elsa Alderman. Clara watched them from across the room, not listening, just watching the body language. See, Rhett said something. Elsa's mouth did the rueful, not-quite-smile thing. See, she said something back. He laughed, the rough, not-quite-decided laugh. See, whatever they were saying, it was not a performance for anyone else's benefit. See, they were just 2 people who had worked alongside each other for 9 years and had ended up here on the same afternoon by different routes. See, Clara turned back to Ruby, who was asking a specific and practical question about the bobbin tension on Beatrice's secondary machine, which they had been having a recurring problem with. See, and Clara answered it specifically and practically because that was what the question deserved. See, the house on 4th Street had a room with north-facing light. See, Clara knew what that meant before anything else was decided about the space. See, north-facing light was the right light for work steady and even, without the shifting drama of the south and east windows, without the late afternoon glare of the west. See, she stood in it on the first afternoon they saw the house, in January, and turned around once slowly and said, "This is the room I'll work in." See, Rhett, who had been looking at the structural soundness of the back wall with the practical attention of a man who knew what bad winters did to plaster, came into the room and looked at it. See, then at her. "It's the biggest room," he said. "I know." See, a pause. "It could be a bedroom. The bedroom can be smaller," she said. See, "We sleep. In here I work." He looked at the light for a moment. See, "Okay," he said. They took the house. The room with the north light became her workroom. See, she moved the better of her two personal machines in the one she'd shipped from Iowa in the fall. Her good machine, the one she'd bought with the first real money she'd ever earned that was entirely her own. See, she set up the cutting table against the north wall, the storage for materials along the east, the secondary chair by the window for when she was in the middle of something and needed to think rather than do. See, Rhett added 2 shelves to the east wall without being asked, built from good timber, level within the tolerance she required. See, he showed them to her when they were done. She ran her hand along the surface of the top shelf. See, even. Solid. "Good," she said. He went back to the kitchen, where he was deciding something about the arrangement of the wood supply. See, she was learning how their days worked. See, not a merging, not a dissolution of the separate into the combined. See, 2 people in adjacent rooms, doing the particular work of their own lives, present to each other without consuming each other. See, it was not an absence of intimacy, it was a specific kind of intimacy that she was beginning to understand was the kind she had always been built for. See, the kind that respected where one person ended and the other began. See, he was not a perfect man. See, he left the barn door of his habits open, sometimes impulsive in small ways, occasionally frustrating in the way that people who felt things intensely were frustrating. Too quick sometimes to act and slower than she'd have liked to reconsider. See, he had opinions about things he had no particular expertise in, delivered with a confidence that she had learned to meet with a specific look that communicated, without words. See, "Are you sure you know what you're talking about?" He was generally good at recognizing the look. See, she was not a perfect woman. She was hard to reach in the ways she'd been hardest to reach her whole life, the ones she'd built walls around, the places where trust was still slow to arrive. See, there were mornings when the self-sufficiency that had protected her for so long felt, in the context of a shared life, like a door she kept forgetting to leave unlocked. See, he had never, in the month since December, rattled the door. See, he waited outside it until she opened it, and she was working consciously, deliberately on opening it more often and sooner than her first instinct told her to. See, they were both, as Beatrice had once said about him, not yet finished becoming who they would be. See, that seemed right. That seemed like the honest description of any 2 real people living an actual life. See, in the spring, Clara trained her first apprentice at Beatrice's shop. See, the girl was 19, the daughter of a ranching family from 20 miles out, practical and serious and too good at this to spend her life doing something else. See, Clara taught her the way she herself had learned, specifically, without condescension, with the expectation that the girl was capable and the patient acknowledgement when she wasn't yet. See, she taught her the seams and the cuts and the client management and the particular courage required to tell a woman that what she wants is not what she needs, and here is why, and here is the better option. See, by summer the girl was taking her own fittings. By fall, Ruby Holt was teaching the basic class herself on the first Saturday of each month, with Clara in the shop if needed, and increasingly not needed. See, the class had grown. What had started with 6 women around a table that was too small was now 15, sometimes 20, rotating through in groups because the space required scheduling. See, Beatrice had stopped pretending to come for something from the back cabinet and simply came and had taken on the intermediate group herself with a rigor that was severe and absolutely effective. See, Clara was already thinking about the next thing, a separate space, eventually. See, more formal. She had begun looking at the building 2 streets over that had been empty for 6 months, had begun running numbers with Beatrice on what a proper school of trade might cost to establish. See, had begun writing the kind of plan she wrote when she was serious about something layered, contingency-aware, built to survive contact with reality. See, she told Rhett about it one evening. He was at the kitchen table when she came in from the workroom, and she told him the whole of it, the building, the numbers, the vision of what it could eventually be. See, he listened with the quality of listening she had never stopped being grateful for. See, when she was done, he said, "What do you need to make it work?" See, not, "Should you be doing this?" Not, "Is that practical? What do you need?" See, she told him. He said he'd talked to a man he knew about the building's structural condition, because knowing the building's structural condition was relevant to the cost estimate, and he knew the right person to ask. See, and that was a concrete thing he could do that would be genuinely useful. See, she said that would help. He went back to what he was doing. See, she went back to the workroom. This was the life. Not the picture she'd had in her mind when she left Iowa, not Silas's picture of a wife in a shopkeeper's kitchen, but not any simpler romantic alternative either. See, nothing as clean as any of the pictures. A workroom with good light and a machine she'd earned. See, a husband who knocked before he came in when she was concentrating, who had learned to read her moods with the accuracy of someone paying close attention, who still sometimes moved before he thought and had to reverse himself. See, who was becoming slowly, imperfectly, genuinely the kind of man that his better instincts had always had the capacity to make him. See, a town that had stopped being someone else's story about her and had become simply where she was from. See, the women in the class who came in not knowing what their work was worth and left with the beginning of an answer. See, Ruby Holt, who had come in one afternoon with a dress that needed mending and had stayed to become, in her own right, someone other women came to. See, none of it was finished. None of it was supposed to be. See, Clara Whitmore. Clara Whitmore Calder now, though she kept both names, because both names were true, stood in the North Light Room in the early morning before anyone else was awake. See, with her coffee and her fabric, and the work that had been hers from the first stitch and would be hers to the last. See, the frontier outside the window was the same raw, undecorated country it had always been. It hadn't softened for anyone, hadn't made exceptions, hadn't offered anything except the chance to build or not build, stay or not stay, become or not become. See, she had stayed. She had built, she had become. Not because someone gave it to her. See, not because a man claimed her as his or a town decided she belonged. See, because she had gotten off a train expecting someone else to make her future and had found slowly, see, through ordinary days and unromantic work and the kind of courage that didn't look like courage from the outside, that the future was hers to make herself. See, she had made it, she was making it still. Outside the window, Red Willow was beginning its morning. See, the town she had arrived in as a stranger was going about the unbeautiful, necessary business of being alive, and she was part of it, not passing through, not waiting to be claimed, not facing the door. Here, fully, finally, on her own terms. Here,